Welcome back to Easy English Talk podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Easy English Talk podcast. It's really great to have you here with us today. And hello, Priya. How has your day been so far?
Hi, Ryan.
My day has been wonderful. Thank you for asking. I've been thinking a lot about language and communication today, actually. How about you? How are things going on your end?
I've been doing well, thank you. I spent some time reading this morning, which always puts me in a good mood. It's nice to start the day with something calm and thoughtful before we dive into our conversation here.
That sounds lovely. Reading is such a peaceful way to begin the day. I completely agree with you on that. It really does help set a positive tone for everything that follows.
Before we begin today's topic, I want to ask our listeners something important. Where are you watching or listening from right now? Are you at home, at work, or maybe traveling somewhere? We'd love to know where in the world you are joining us from today.
Yes, and we're also curious to know if this podcast is helping you improve your English. Are you finding value in these conversations? Are they helping you grow, not just in language, but also in understanding yourself and the world better?
Please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We read them and we really appreciate hearing from you. Your feedback helps us understand what's working and what you'd like to hear more of in future episodes.
Absolutely. We love connecting with our listeners and learning about your experiences. Your journey with English matters to us, and we want to support you in every way we can through these conversations.
Today, we are discussing how to connect English sentences naturally. This is something many learners struggle with, and we're going to explore it together in a clear and practical way.
This topic is so important because connecting sentences well makes your English sound smooth and professional. When you speak or write, people understand you better, and you feel more confident expressing your ideas clearly.
Exactly. And if you stay with us until the end, you'll learn specific techniques that you can use right away. These aren't complicated grammar rules. They're simple, natural ways to make your English flow like a native speaker's.
You'll also understand why your English might sound choppy or disconnected right now, even if your grammar is correct. Many learners face this problem, and today we'll show you exactly how to fix it step by step.
So let's start by understanding the problem first. Many English learners know vocabulary and grammar well. They can form correct sentences. But when they speak or write, something feels off. The sentences don't flow together smoothly.
That's right. Each sentence might be perfectly correct on its own, but when you put them together, they sound separate and disconnected. It's like building a wall with bricks but forgetting to use cement between them.
That's a great comparison. The bricks are there, but they're not connected. And this happens because many learners focus only on individual sentences. They think about one sentence at a time without considering how it relates to the next one.
Exactly. In school, we often practice making one sentence, then another, but we don't learn how to link them together naturally. So when we speak, it sounds like a list of separate statements rather than a smooth conversation.
And this creates a real problem in communication. When your sentences don't connect well, listeners have to work harder to follow your meaning. They might understand each sentence, but they can't see the relationship between your ideas.
Yes, and this makes you sound less fluent than you actually are. Even if you know a lot of English, the lack of connection between sentences makes people think your level is lower than it really is.
It also affects your confidence. When you notice that your speaking doesn't flow smoothly, you start to feel uncertain. You might pause too much, repeat yourself, or struggle to express complete thoughts during conversations.
I've seen this happen many times with advanced learners. They have excellent vocabulary and good grammar, but their speech sounds mechanical. It's like reading from a textbook instead of having a real conversation with another person.
So the core problem is this disconnect between sentences. And the interesting thing is, native speakers connect sentences automatically. They don't think about it. But learners need to understand the mechanics first before it becomes natural for them.
That's an important point. Native speakers grew up hearing connected speech every day. They absorbed these patterns naturally from childhood. But as adult learners, we need to learn these patterns consciously and practice them until they become automatic.
Now let's talk about why this happens. One major reason is translation. Many learners translate from their native language into English, sentence by sentence. But different languages connect ideas in different ways.
Absolutely. In some languages, you might express ideas in a very different order, or you might use different connecting words. When you translate directly, you bring those patterns into English, and it doesn't sound natural.
Another reason is that learners often think in their own language first, then convert it to English. This creates a mental gap. By the time you finish one sentence and start thinking about the next one, the connection between them gets lost.
And there's also the fear of making mistakes. Some learners focus so much on getting each sentence grammatically correct that they forget about the flow. They pause after every sentence to check if it was right, and this breaks the natural rhythm.
That's true. They're so worried about accuracy that they sacrifice fluency. But in real communication, fluency and natural flow are just as important as accuracy. People need to hear your ideas flowing smoothly from one to the next.
Let me give you an example of disconnected sentences. Imagine someone says, I went to the store. I bought some milk. I came home. Each sentence is correct, but they sound like three separate events with no relationship.
Exactly. A native speaker would probably say something like, I went to the store to buy some milk and then I came home. The ideas are connected with purpose and sequence, which makes the meaning clearer and the speech smoother.
That small change makes a huge difference. Instead of three choppy sentences, you have one flowing statement that tells a complete story. The listener doesn't have to work to understand how the ideas relate to each other.
So now that we understand the problem, let's move into solutions. The first and most important technique is using transition words and phrases. These are the words that act like bridges between your sentences.
Transition words show relationships between ideas. They tell the listener whether you're adding information, contrasting ideas, showing cause and effect, giving examples, or moving to a new point. They guide people through your thoughts.
Some simple transition words are however, therefore, moreover, furthermore, in addition, on the other hand, as a result, for example, and in fact. These words help your sentences connect logically and naturally.
Let's see how this works. Without transitions, you might say, I studied hard. I didn't pass the exam. With a transition, you say, I studied hard. However, I didn't pass the exam. The word however shows contrast and makes the connection clear.
That's perfect. The listener immediately understands that something unexpected happened. The transition word carries meaning beyond the individual sentences. It adds a layer of relationship between the two ideas.
Another example would be, she loves traveling. She visits a new country every year. You could connect these by saying, she loves traveling. In fact, she visits a new country every year. The phrase in fact emphasizes and expands the first idea.
These transitions make your speech sound more sophisticated and easier to follow. But here's an important point. You don't need to use transition words in every single sentence. If you overuse them, your speech will sound forced and unnatural.
That's right. Use them when you need to show a clear relationship between ideas. For simple, closely related sentences, you might not need a transition at all. The key is balance and awareness of when they truly help.
The second technique is using pronouns and reference words to create continuity. When you mention something in one sentence, refer back to it in the next sentence using words like this, that, these, those, it, or they.
This technique creates a thread that runs through your sentences. Instead of repeating the same noun over and over, you use pronouns to connect back to what you just said. It makes your speech flow naturally and avoids repetition.
For example, instead of saying, my brother bought a car, my brother drives the car to work every day, you would say, my brother bought a car, he drives it to work every day. The pronouns he and it create a smooth connection.
You can also use demonstrative pronouns for emphasis and connection. Learning English takes time and effort. This is something many people forget. The word this refers to the entire previous sentence and connects it to your new point.
Another useful reference technique is using words like such, the former, the latter, or the following. These words point backward or forward in your speech, creating clear links between sentences and helping listeners track your ideas.
For instance, you might say, there are two main reasons people struggle with speaking. The former is lack of practice. The latter is fear of making mistakes. This structure keeps everything organized and connected.
The third technique is repeating keywords or phrases strategically. This might sound like the opposite of what we just said about pronouns, but when done carefully, repetition creates rhythm and emphasizes important ideas.
The difference is in how you use repetition. You don't repeat every noun mindlessly. Instead, you repeat specific, important words to create emphasis, build your argument, or make your point memorable to the listener.
For example, confidence is essential for learning. Confidence helps you take risks. Without confidence, you'll never improve. The word confidence appears 3 times, and this repetition drives the message home powerfully.
You can also use variations of the same word. She decided to start her own business. That decision changed her life. Her decisive action inspired others. The words decided, decision, and decisive create a word family that connects the sentences.
This technique works especially well when you're making an important argument or trying to persuade someone. The repetition creates a sense of coherence and makes your message stick in the listener's mind more effectively.
Just be careful not to overdo it. Too much repetition sounds boring and amateur. Use it selectively for your most important points and balance it with variety in the rest of your speech.
The fourth technique is using parallel structure. This means constructing your sentences in similar grammatical patterns. When sentences have parallel structure, they create rhythm and flow that the listener can feel and follow easily.
Parallel structure is like creating a pattern that the listener's brain can recognize and anticipate. It makes your speech more memorable and pleasant to listen to. It's commonly used in speeches, presentations, and persuasive writing.
A famous example is, I came, I saw, I conquered. 3 short clauses with the same structure. The pattern creates power and momentum. You can use similar patterns in everyday speech too.
For instance, in the morning, I exercise. In the afternoon, I work. In the evening, I relax. The repeated structure in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening creates a smooth, organized flow of information.
You can also use parallel structure within a single sentence to connect multiple ideas. She enjoys reading books, watching movies, and listening to music. The pattern of verb plus noun repeated 3 times creates balance.
Parallel structure also works with comparisons and contrasts. Some people learn best by listening. Others learn best by doing. The repetition of some people, others, and learn best by creates a clear, connected contrast.
The 5th technique is using conjunctions not just within sentences, but to start sentences when appropriate. Words like and, but, or, and so can begin sentences in conversational English and create natural flow between thoughts.
Many learners were taught never to start a sentence with and or but. However, in modern English, especially in speaking and informal writing, this is perfectly acceptable and actually makes your speech sound more natural and connected.
Or you might say she studied medicine for 6 years, and now she's helping people every day. Starting with and creates continuity and builds on the previous idea in a warm conversational way.
The key is knowing when to use this technique. It works well in storytelling, casual explanations, and when you want to emphasize a contrast or continuation. In very formal writing, you might choose different connectors, but in speaking, this is natural. Just don't start every sentence with a conjunction. Use this technique occasionally for emphasis and variety. It's one tool in your toolkit, not the only tool you should use.
The 6th technique is asking rhetorical questions to create engagement and transition. A rhetorical question is a question you ask not to get an answer, but to introduce a new idea or make the listener think.
Rhetorical questions are powerful because they involve the listener mentally. They create a pause, generate curiosity, and guide attention to what comes next. They're excellent for connecting different sections of your speech or writing.
For example, you might say, many people struggle with time management. Why does this happen? The answer lies in how we prioritize our tasks. The question creates a bridge from the problem to the explanation.
Or you could use a question to introduce a contrasting idea. Exercise is important for health, but what about mental health? Mental health deserves equal attention and care. The question pivots the conversation to a related topic.
You can also use questions to involve the listener personally. We've talked about grammar. Now, what about vocabulary? How can you expand your word knowledge effectively? This makes the listener feel included in the conversation.
Rhetorical questions work especially well when you're teaching or explaining something. They break up long explanations and give the listeners small mental breaks while keeping them engaged and curious about what you'll say next.
The 7th technique is using time expressions to show sequence and chronology. Words and phrases like first, next, then, after that, finally, meanwhile, previously, and eventually help organize your thoughts in a clear timeline.
These time markers are incredibly useful for telling stories, giving instructions, or explaining processes. They guide the listener through events in the right order and prevent confusion about what happened when.
For example, first heat the oil in a pan. Next, add the onions and cook them until soft. Then add the tomatoes and spices. Finally, let everything simmer for 10 minutes. Each time word creates a clear step-by-step flow.
You can also use time expressions to connect ideas across different time periods. I used to be afraid of public speaking. Eventually, I realized that practice was the only solution. Now, I speak confidently in front of large groups.
These expressions help the listener understand your journey or the development of an idea over time. They create narrative flow and make your experience more relatable and easier to follow from beginning to end.
Time markers also work well in comparing past and present. Previously, people communicated through letters. Today, we use instant messaging. In the future, communication might become even more immediate through new technology.
The 8th technique is using cause and effect language to show logical connections. Words like because, since, as a result, therefore, consequently, and due to help explain why things happen and how ideas relate logically.
This technique is essential for explanations, arguments, and analysis. It helps the listener understand not just what happened, but why it happened. It creates depth in your communication and shows logical thinking.
For instance, the roads were icy. As a result, many accidents occurred. The phrase "as a result" clearly shows that the icy roads caused the accidents. The connection between the two ideas is explicit and easy to understand.
You can also reverse the order. Many accidents occurred because the roads were icy. Starting with the effect and then explaining the cause is equally valid and often feels more natural in conversation.
Another example is she practiced every day. Therefore, her skills improved dramatically. The word therefore shows that practice was the reason for improvement. This creates a logical flow from action to outcome.
Cause and effect language is particularly important in academic or professional contexts. When you're explaining problems and solutions, analyzing situations, or making recommendations, you need to show clear logical relationships between ideas.
The ninth technique is using contrast and comparison words to highlight differences and similarities. Words like while, whereas, although, unlike, similarly, likewise, and in contrast help you compare ideas and show relationships between them.
These words are valuable when you're discussing options, weighing pros and cons, or showing different perspectives. They help the listener see the full picture by understanding how different ideas relate to each other.
For example, coffee contains caffeine. In contrast, herbal tea is naturally caffeine-free. The phrase "in contrast" highlights the difference between the two drinks and makes the comparison clear and direct.
You can also show similarity. Exercise improves physical health. Similarly, meditation improves mental health. The word similarly draws a parallel between two beneficial activities and helps the listener see the connection.
Another useful pattern is, although the weather was cold, we enjoyed our walk. The word although introduces a contrast within a single sentence and shows that the cold weather didn't prevent enjoyment.
These contrast and comparison words add sophistication to your English. They show that you can handle complex ideas and see relationships between different concepts. This makes you sound more analytical and thoughtful.
The 10th technique is varying your sentence length to create rhythm and maintain interest. If all your sentences are the same length, your speech becomes monotonous. Mixing short and long sentences creates natural flow and emphasis.
Short sentences are powerful. They create emphasis and clarity. They make important points stand out. Long sentences, on the other hand, allow you to develop complex ideas, add details, and show relationships between multiple thoughts in a flowing, connected way.
When you combine different sentence lengths, you create a rhythm that feels natural to the listener. After a long, complex sentence, a short sentence gives the listener a break and emphasizes your point.
For instance, learning a language requires dedication, consistent practice, and patience with yourself as you make mistakes and gradually improve over time. It's not easy, but it's worth it. The pattern goes from long to short, creating impact.
This variation also mirrors how we naturally speak. In real conversation, we don't use perfectly balanced sentences all the time. We adapt our sentence length based on what we're saying and what we want to emphasize.
The key is being intentional. Don't vary sentence length randomly. Use shorter sentences for important points, conclusions, or moments when you want the listener to really pay attention. Use longer sentences for explanations, descriptions, and developing ideas.
Now, let's talk about the 11th technique, which is using examples and elaboration to connect abstract ideas to concrete reality. When you make a general statement, follow it with, for example, for instance, or to illustrate this.
Examples are essential for clarity. They take your ideas from the theoretical level down to the practical level, where people can see, understand, and relate to what you're saying. They bridge the gap between concept and reality.
For instance, you might say, good communication requires active listening. For example, when someone is speaking, you should maintain eye contact and avoid interrupting them. The example makes the abstract concept of active listening concrete and actionable.
You can also use elaboration to expand on an idea. Consistency is key to learning. In other words, studying for 30 minutes every day is more effective than studying for 5 hours once a week. The phrase, in other words, introduces a clarification.
Another useful phrase is to put it simply, or to put it another way. These phrases help you rephrase complex ideas in clearer terms, which improves understanding and creates flow by building on what you just said.
When you use examples and elaboration effectively, you're not just connecting sentences, you're connecting ideas at different levels of abstraction, which helps all types of listeners understand your message, regardless of their background or learning style.
The 12th technique is using conversational markers and discourse markers to make your speech sound more natural. These are words and phrases like, you know, I mean, well, actually, basically, honestly, and to be honest.
These markers might seem like filler words, but they actually serve important functions. They show your attitude toward what you're saying, they give you time to think, and they make your speech sound more human and less scripted.
For example, the presentation was challenging. Actually, it was the hardest thing I've done this year. The word actually emphasizes that you're revising or strengthening your previous statement. It creates connection through clarification.
Or you might say, I think learning languages is important. I mean, it opens so many doors in life. The phrase I mean signals that you're about to explain or expand on what you just said.
Be careful with these markers in formal situations. In casual conversation, they're perfectly fine and make you sound fluent. In formal presentations or writing, use them sparingly and choose more formal alternatives when appropriate.
The key is authenticity. Don't force these markers into your speech if they don't feel natural. But when used genuinely, they create a conversational tone that helps connect your sentences in a warm, approachable way.
The 13th technique is using topic sentences and concluding sentences to frame your ideas. When you start a new point, introduce it clearly. When you finish that point, summarize or conclude it before moving to the next idea.
This technique creates structure and helps the listener follow your train of thought. It's like building paragraphs in your speech. Each section has a clear beginning, middle, and end, which makes the overall message easier to follow.
For example, you might say, "Let me talk about the importance of reading." Reading expands your vocabulary, improves your writing, and exposes you to new ideas. So, as you can see, reading is essential for language development.
The phrase, "let me talk about," introduces the topic. The middle sentences develop it. And the phrase, "so as you can see," concludes the point and prepares the listener for a transition to the next idea.
You can also use phrases like, "Another important point is," or "moving on to," or "finally, I'd like to mention." These phrases signal transitions and help organize your speech into clear, connected sections.
This organizational technique is especially important in longer speeches, presentations, or explanations. It prevents your ideas from becoming a confusing jumble and instead creates a clear path that the listener can follow easily from start to finish.
Now, let's discuss the 14th technique, which is matching your verb tenses consistently. When your verb tenses jump around without reason, it breaks the connection between sentences and confuses the listener about the timeline of events.
Consistent verb tenses create a smooth narrative flow. If you're telling a story in the past tense, stay in the past tense unless you have a specific reason to shift. If you're describing present habits, stay in the present tense.
For example, incorrect would be, "Yesterday I went to the park. I am sitting on a bench. A dog comes and sits next to me." The tenses are all mixed up, which makes the story confusing and disconnected.
Correct would be, "Yesterday I went to the park. I sat on a bench. A dog came and sat next to me." All past tense, creating a clear, connected narrative that flows naturally from one sentence to the next.
Of course, sometimes you need to shift tenses intentionally. "I visited Paris last year. Now I want to go back." The shift from past to present is deliberate and signals a change from past experience to current desire.
The key is being aware of your tense choices and making sure they match the meaning you want to convey. Random tense shifts break the flow, but intentional tense shifts for clear reasons actually enhance connection and clarity.
The 15th technique is using the power of pausing and pacing in spoken English. While this doesn't apply to writing, in speaking, the way you pause between sentences affects how connected they feel to the listener.
A very brief pause between closely related sentences keeps them feeling connected. A longer pause signals that you're moving to a new idea. The length of your pause communicates relationship and helps the listener understand your structure.
If you pause too long after every sentence, even well-connected ideas will feel choppy. If you don't pause at all, you'll sound rushed and overwhelming. The right pacing creates natural flow and gives listeners time to process.
You can also use pauses for emphasis. After making an important point, pause briefly, let it sink in, then continue with your next thought. This pause creates impact and helps the important idea stand out in the listener's mind.
Pacing also involves speaking at a consistent, comfortable speed. If you rush through some sentences and slow down randomly on others, it breaks the flow. Steady pacing with intentional variations for emphasis creates the smoothest connection.
Practice this by reading aloud and paying attention to where you naturally pause. Record yourself and listen back. Notice where the flow feels smooth and where it feels broken. Then adjust your pausing and pacing accordingly.
The 16th technique is building coherence through topic consistency. Each section of your speech should stay focused on one main idea. Don't jump randomly between unrelated topics. Keep your sentences connected to the central theme.
When all your sentences relate to the same topic, they naturally feel connected, even without many transition words. The listener can follow your logic because everything ties back to the main point you're developing.
For example, if you're talking about healthy eating, keep all your sentences related to that topic. Don't suddenly start talking about exercise unless you're making a deliberate transition to show how exercise relates to healthy eating.
If you do need to shift topics, signal it clearly. Say something like, "Now let's move from healthy eating to exercise," or "This brings me to another related point." Make the topic shift explicit so the listener doesn't feel lost.
Topic consistency also means organizing related ideas together. Group all your points about benefits together, then all your points about challenges together. This logical grouping creates natural connection and flow throughout your speech.
When you maintain topic consistency, the listener's brain can build a coherent picture. Each new sentence adds to that picture instead of fragmenting it. This makes your communication more powerful and memorable.
Let's move to the 17th technique, which is using conditional language to show possibilities and hypothetical connections. Words like if, unless, provided that, and in case help connect sentences by showing relationships between conditions and outcomes.
Conditional language adds sophistication to your English. It shows that you can think about different scenarios and possibilities. It connects ideas by showing what depends on what, which creates logical flow.
For example, you want to improve your English. If you practice every day, you'll see progress. The word if creates a clear connection between the desire to improve and the action needed to achieve it.
You can also express conditions differently. You'll improve your English provided that you practice consistently. The phrase "provided that" introduces a condition and connects it to the result in a more formal way.
Another pattern is practice every day. Otherwise, you won't see much progress. The word otherwise shows what happens if the condition isn't met. It creates connection by showing both sides of the situation.
Conditional language is especially useful in giving advice, making predictions, or explaining cause and effect. It helps you show complex relationships between actions and outcomes in a clear, connected way.
The 18th and final technique we'll discuss today is listening to and imitating native speakers. The best way to learn how to connect sentences naturally is to hear how native speakers do it constantly.
Listen to podcasts, watch videos, read articles aloud, and pay attention to how ideas flow from one sentence to the next. Notice the patterns, the transition words, the rhythm. Then practice imitating those patterns in your own speech.
You don't need to copy exactly. You're learning the principles and patterns. When you hear a speaker connect ideas smoothly, pause and think about what techniques they used. Then try to use similar techniques yourself.
This is called modeling. You're building an internal sense of what sounds natural by exposing yourself to good examples repeatedly. Over time, these patterns become automatic, and you'll connect sentences naturally without thinking about it.
The more you listen actively and practice consciously, the faster you'll internalize these connection techniques. It's like learning music. You listen to songs, you understand the patterns, and then you can create your own music using those patterns.
And remember, making mistakes is part of the process. You'll connect sentences awkwardly sometimes. You'll use the wrong transition word occasionally. That's completely normal and expected. Keep practicing, and you'll keep improving.
So let's summarize what we've covered today. We started by understanding why sentences feel disconnected. The problem usually comes from focusing on individual sentences without thinking about how they relate to each other.
Then we explored 18 specific techniques you can use to connect your sentences naturally. These included transition words, pronouns, repetition, parallel structure, conjunctions, rhetorical questions, time expressions, and cause and effect language.
We also talked about contrast and comparison words, varying sentence length, using examples, conversational markers, topic sentences, consistent verb tenses, pausing and pacing, topic consistency, conditional language, and learning from native speakers.
The most important thing to remember is that you don't need to use all these techniques at once. Start with one or two that feel natural to you. Practice them until they become automatic. Then add more techniques gradually.
As you practice, pay attention to how your sentences sound. Record yourself speaking and listen back. Notice where the flow feels smooth and where it feels choppy. Then adjust your approach based on what you hear.
Also, read your writing aloud. Even written English should flow smoothly when spoken. If something sounds awkward or disconnected when you read it aloud, revise it using the techniques we discussed today.
Remember that connecting sentences naturally takes time and practice. Don't expect perfection immediately. Focus on progress, not perfection. Each time you practice, you're building the neural pathways that will eventually make this skill automatic.
And most importantly, keep the bigger picture in mind. The goal isn't just to connect sentences mechanically. The goal is to communicate your ideas clearly, effectively, and naturally so that people understand and connect with what you're saying.
When your sentences flow smoothly, people listen more easily. They understand you better. They remember your message. And you feel more confident because you know you're communicating like a fluent speaker.
These skills will help you in every area where you use English: in conversations with friends, in professional presentations, in written emails, in job interviews, in academic papers, everywhere. Connected, flowing English is powerful English.
So take what you've learned today and put it into practice. Choose one technique from this episode and focus on it this week. Notice it in the English you hear around you. Use it consciously in your own speaking and writing.
Next week, add another technique. Build your skills gradually and steadily. Before you know it, connecting sentences naturally will become second nature to you. You won't have to think about it anymore. It will just happen.
We want to thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We hope this conversation has given you practical tools and clear understanding that you can use right away to improve how you connect your sentences.
Your commitment to learning English is inspiring, and we're honored to be part of your journey. Remember, every conversation you have, every sentence you speak, is an opportunity to practice and grow. Keep moving forward.
And before we finish, we'd love to invite you to explore other episodes on the Easy English Talk podcast channel. We have many helpful conversations covering different aspects of English learning and personal growth.
Whether you want to improve your pronunciation, expand your vocabulary, build confidence in speaking, or develop other important skills, there's an episode that can help you. Take some time to browse through and find topics that interest you.
Thank you once again for being here with us. We wish you all the best in your English learning journey. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember that every small step forward is progress worth celebrating.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep connecting those sentences and speaking with confidence. Goodbye for now.